tonight. This is a great turnout. I was telling the chief and the sheriff we have a nice cross-section community here, and that's important for our topic this morning, so thank you for coming out. We can't do these types of events without sponsors, and I wanted to introduce and bring up Brian Lynch. Brian runs Antietam Cable Television, and they were just awarded the Large Business of the Year this year as well. So let's welcome Brian.
Morning. Antietam Cable is very pleased to sponsor this morning's Nation Issues. Addressing the realities of crime and drug use, as well as the perception of crime, which can equally affect business and economic development, is important for Hagerstown and the economic health of all of Washington County. We appreciate and thank Chief Holtzman and Sheriff Mullendore for making the time to join us this morning. And thanks to all of you for coming and supporting this important chamber event and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And Brian noted, you cannot have a vibrant business community and quality of life if you don't have good public safety. It's important. So we're going to talk this morning about some of those topics. We're going to talk about partnering with the business community. And I'll introduce first the chief. He'll have a few comments, and then I'll introduce the sheriff. And while he's making way, I'm going to read just a short bio that I was sent. Chief Mark Holtzman is a 25-year veteran of the Hagerstown Police Department, where he has served our local community in a variety of positions. During his tenure at the department, he has served as a detective, patrol sergeant, director of the Washington County Narcotics Task Force, a patrol lieutenant, and the operations captain before his promotion to chief of police. Chief Holtzman is a graduate of the FBI's National Academy for Law Enforcement Executives and holds a graduate degree in public administration and an undergraduate degree in criminal justice from the University of Baltimore. His leadership focus for the Hagerstown Police Department is the area of intelligence-led policing and community policing. Please help me welcome Chief Mark Holtzman.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to try a little bit. Probably move around a little bit. Welcome. Here with the sheriff today. We tag team on a lot of talks, and it's always fun to do a talk with him. I'll reserve my rebuttal if he comes after me with any jokes, so I get the last word. The sheriff and I are here to talk about the building blocks, some of the things, the issues that we're addressing, seeing in the community and how we're addressing them. But that all ties back into the perception of crime in our community. How does it tie back? Well, I'd like to talk about the crime trends in our community, and it's no different in Hagerstown than it is in the county as well. All of Washington County has been on a decline or leveled off in the last 2 decades. The problem is, even though crime has been stepping down, you can think of your own businesses and your own charts, if you would actually, the bottom line lowers, the perception of crime stays high. The perception of crime is up, and it remains up. And so we do two parallel things as we work every day. One is we work with our officers on the street. They're the ones that are out there protecting us. Detectives are investigating cases. They're the ones that are addressing the crime problems as they come along. At the same time, we're trying to work in the community like we are today to address the perception of crime. Because if we don't get that right, we can continuously lower the actual crime rate, and it will have no effect on your businesses. Nobody's going to want to live in the neighborhood because we're not addressing the real issues. Nobody's going to want to move their business here because it's not a safe community. It's not perceived safe. So dealing with that perception is no different than as you deal with your businesses. If you have a great business model, you're putting out a great product, but as a leader of that business, if the reputation of your business is not that great, where's your product going to go? You're not going to sell it. It's the same thing for us. So we believe we have a good product. We're addressing issues as they're coming along. We're going to talk about each of those blocks, the main parts that we're working on now, sort of current events for you. But as we address each one of those, we hope that the takeaway for you all is that you're more educated about what's really going on in the community, and you can be more of ambassadors for our own community. Because if we can all lower this perception of crime in our community, we can say, no, that's really not the way it is. I heard from the chief or the sheriff that this is what's really going on, and this is how they're working to fix it. This is how they're working with the community. We can bring down the perception. So we're going to tie that back in at the end, hopefully, if we're successful. And I'm going to hand it off to the sheriff to talk about the first couple blocks.
My pleasure to read a short bio on our sheriff. Doug Mullendore is a lifelong resident of Washington County and currently lives in Williamsport with his wife, Lisa. He has 2 adult children. Sheriff Mullendore started his career in June 1974 when he was hired by the Boonesboro Police Department to work as a part-time police officer. He was then hired by the Washington County Sheriff's Office in January 1982 as a patrol deputy. Sheriff Mullendore has worked every aspect of law enforcement, from patrolling the streets to crime prevention, criminal investigations, narcotics investigations. Sheriff Mullendore was awarded Deputy of the Year twice by the Maryland Sheriff's Association in 1983 and again in 1996. Sheriff Mullendore was the first director of the newly formed Washington County Narcotics Task Force in 1986. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy in 1994. He is also a graduate of the DEA Narcotics Supervisor School, Maryland State Police Criminal Investigation Class, and Advanced Criminal Investigation Class. He rose to the ranks of the Sheriff's Office. He eventually became the Chief Deputy in 2001 under Sheriff Charles Madies. Sheriff Mullendore earned his bachelor's degree in Criminal Justice Administration in 2004 through the University of Phoenix. He ran for the office of Sheriff and was elected in 2006. He is presently in his 9th year as Sheriff. Please help me welcome Sheriff Mullendore.
Wow, with all that and $5, you can get a cup of coffee. First of all, I wanted to start out talking about a couple of the issues that we have in Washington County, and Chief Holtzman is going to touch on the heroin issue, and I'm going to kind of sideline that for a moment, although I'm going to talk about it as part of an issue or initiative that we're doing. But most people in the county are not aware that Washington County is ranked very high in the state, but not for something good. Would you believe that we have the 5th largest fatality rate in the state? I'm not very proud of that. And unfortunately, it's been that way for the last 3 years. And I think all of us as motorists have been on the street, and you see how people drive. The fact that they're on their cell phone, or they're sitting there texting and driving, or men are shaving, or women are putting their makeup on, and all those issues. Well, unfortunately, that leads to the fatalities. You know, our most recent fatality just was that. You know, somebody was on their cell phone and happened to swerve and struck somebody. That is not something that we care to see. I mean, when you start losing 25 of your citizens, and that's about 5 times as many homicides as we have in the county, then we have an issue that we need to address. So this is one of the things I think the business community can help us with in getting the word out there for traffic safety and the importance of paying attention while you're driving, not using your cell phone, and so forth. And you as individuals can start that yourself. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand how many people inadvertently, use their cell phone. And I can tell you almost to 100% that the people I stop have a Bluetooth in their car and either don't know how to hook it up or just don't bother. And that's a shame. That really is a shame. We issued, just the Sheriff's Office alone, issued about 10,000 citations in 2014, and that's not including the other communities within our county. I will also tell you that we partnered with the Hagerstown Police Department and the Maryland State Police. We have a program called DDAX. It's a data-driven approach to crime and traffic safety. And basically what that is, it's identifying areas within your community where you have high crime rates and high traffic collisions in the same area. And Halfway is one of those, Williamsport, Boggins Avenue and Layersburg Pike, and then Robinwood Drive. And of course, anybody who's driving on Robinwood Drive now, you know it's an obstacle course in and of itself. So if you're not paying attention to your driving, you're going to rear end somebody pretty quickly. So the requirement for the DDAC program is that every officer working a shift has to work a minimum of 30 hours of enforcement in that area. It's not so much about issuing traffic citations. It's more about visibility, having the opportunity to stop individuals, because individuals who are committing crimes also drive, and being able to look in those cars and look for evidence of crime is paramount. It's been a hugely successful program in those areas, and so we will continue those efforts. I'm going to hold day reporting for last. Another area that we work collaboratively together is on active shooter. I think all of us, as you watch the media, hear about shootings almost on a daily basis. And that's not to say that it can't happen in Washington County, because it can. And if we're not prepared to handle that as a community and as public safety, then shame on us. So we've been working for probably the last 3 or 4 years very heavily in training for those issues. We just completed an exercise at Meredith Medical Center. And think about this one for a second. Where do you take people who are injured? The hospital, right? Well, if the hospital is what's tied up because you have an active shooter incident, now what kind of problems do you have? So think about that one. And that's why we prepare for these types of things. We're getting ready to do one at the Valley Mall in May. We were trying to do it before Christmas, but unfortunately, at Christmas time, the stores get to dictate what they can do at the mall. We don't. We're also going to be doing a large-scale exercise at Meredith in the fall, and implementing the lessons that we've learned with that. One of the things that we recognized, in not just in the county, but also as a region, is the new concept of incident management team. The issues of Katrina, many of the Sandy, for example, many of the larger shootings, the Sandy Hook shooting, Columbine, so forth, is that these are long-term events. These are not something that occurs for 24 hours and dissipates. We're talking about events that are sometimes days, sometimes weeks, and sometimes months. And in order to manage those types of events effectively, we in the Western Maryland region have created an incident management team. It's an all-hazard team. Captain Piper is part of that team in Washington County. We have about, I'm going to say 14 or 15 members just in Washington County alone, and then we have partners in Allegheny and Dare County. So we can respond to incidences that have occurred and help that community deal with long-term management of those types of events. We actually deployed for the national canoe races in Dare County back in September, and we're very effective with that. Another issue that is paramount in our community, and most people aren't aware of it until you see the helicopter flying overhead and you see all the cops out, and that is the issue of missing persons. We've had a large number of missing persons in our community. We've been very successful in doing that. But about 6 years ago, the legislature changed the focus of who had the responsibility of missing persons. It used to be your local fire department basically got together a whole bunch of volunteers, went out into the woods and started looking for these individuals. But what they found out is that there is actually a methodical way that you have to conduct these searches. And it was all emanated from, there was a case in Baltimore City, and it was a young girl who went missing. The law enforcement officer came and took the report, entered them in the national computer, but basically didn't do a whole lot other than that. And lo and behold, this young lady ended up deceased as a homicide down in North Carolina. And as a result of that, the legislature changed the focus and made it a law enforcement focus, and also kind of mandated some of the things that we do. So in our county, we decided to do a collaborative effort. We do it with the Hagerstown Police Department, with the smaller municipalities, emergency services participate in that, and we have missing persons search managers, as well as ground force folks who are trained to look for clues and evidence of that crime in most cases, as those individuals are searching for that missing person. One of the things that happens, one of the first things we do is actually bring out a bloodhound dog, because we want to know an area that that individual may have taken off to. It's surprising also how many people, how many parents will call us and say their child is missing, and we go there and we search the residence. We will search it more than once because kids are very astute at hiding. And a number of times we found those kids in the house, and the parents have searched it several times and didn't find the kid. So that's one of the things that we do. And then we have what's called air scent dogs. What an air scent dog is, and we have a number of volunteer teams throughout the state that we utilize, is that they are trained to search for human scent, not a particular human scent like most of our police dogs are. They will go out and they will work a large area. They can do about 100 acres in a couple of hours. And when the dog actually locates a human, they will either sit and bark, or they will come back to their handler and then take the handler to where that individual is. Those types of searches, unfortunately, it's very easy to contaminate areas. If we had a large number of volunteers, for example, that just went out into the woods or in a field looking for somebody, they could easily contaminate that scent, and it makes it much more difficult. You probably remember about a year ago, we had a young lady from Salima Drive that went missing. She was gone all night. It was very cold out. We were talking down in the 30s, and she only had a sweatshirt with a hood on it. And we were successful in that finding her because of the air scent dog. The helicopter flew over. We used a bloodhound. Bloodhound didn't locate her. And the reason being is she was smart enough to lay up against the wall and completely cover herself with leaves as insulation. And we would have never found her if it hadn't been for the air scent dogs being able to sniff out that scent and then taking the handler to her. So we were successful in recovering her before she had suffered a great deal of frostbite or even death. Okay, let's get to day reporting. We have, obviously, a heroin problem, as well as other drug addictions within our community. And one of the things that we've done for years is incarcerate people. But unfortunately, it hasn't worked. Our drug problem has gotten worse. And I'm going to leave the statistics to Chief Holtzman. I don't want to steal his thunder. But we have to start treating these individuals as people who have a medical issue and not a crime issue. Because if we're going to return them as successful citizens, we need to treat them and have them deal with their community. Because what happens when they get incarcerated, yes, they're drug-free while they're incarcerated, but the moment they get released, they go right back to the same community they came from. And the people who were dealing heroin to them or whatever drug is going to be there and pressuring them to get high. And oftentimes, within hours of getting released, they're high again. It's just a cycle effect, and we have to stop that. And so when I started looking at this program, the concept of day reporting is very much like community policing. It means a whole lot of things to a whole lot of people. But the one program I found, which I found intriguing at the time, is actually being done and has been done since April 2006 with our neighbors to the north, Franklin County. They have a day reporting program there. Very much like what we're looking at doing in Washington County. And what day reporting is, it's an alternative to incarceration for those individuals who have an addiction, not first-time offenders, but those who have an addiction, and not only to drugs, but also to alcohol. One of the things that we've been successful at doing for those people who are incarcerated, how many people in the room by show of hands have ever heard of the drug called Vivitrol? We have a few, not very many. Most of you hear about methadone or Suboxone as the drug that is used to get someone off of addiction. But what you don't know is Vivitrol is an antagonist. It does not make you high like methadone or Suboxone. You have to be drug-free for a period of 10 days before you can get a shot, which lasts for 28 days. The drug itself attaches itself to the receptors that the opiate normally, and it's also good for alcohol, by the way. And so even if, after you've taken the shot, even if you were to inject yourself with an opiate or sniff it or whatever, you cannot get high. So what Vivitrol does is basically allows you to deal with your addiction in a drug-free state so that you can make clear decisions, informed decisions, rather than being in a drug state with methadone and Suboxone. And I'm not saying that those are bad. I'm just saying that Vivitrol gives a better alternative in some cases. Some people have been on methadone for years and still haven't kicked their habit. So let's put another tool in the toolbox. And that's exactly what we did. We partnered with the health department to bring that program to the jail. We were the first in the country, not the county, the first in the country to initiate that program in the jail. And since then, it's been duplicated a number of areas across the country. And if you saw Governor Hogan's initiative for heroin, Washington County Detention Center was mentioned in that. And we're looking to duplicate that program all across the state in our detention centers and prisons. So that's one initiative. Another initiative that we started about a year ago was for our inmates is to train them on the use of Narcan, naloxone. And basically that's the drug that if you have overdosed on an opiate, it will bring you out of that overdose almost immediately. And then when they get released from jail, they get a prescription for that Narcan, so that if any of their friends that they're around have overdosed, they have the ability to administer that. Likewise, we're training the family of those inmates and providing them a kit of Narcan, so that if their loved one or one of their friends overdoses, we can use that as well. So again, the Day Reporting Center is just another concept. We're working collaboratively with the health department, addictions unit, to do that. We're treating them in a holistic approach because a lot of these folks have other issues. They have mental health issues. They have life skill issues. They have work skill issues. So we're working with them in a holistic approach so that they can deal not only with their addiction, but all the other issues and their lifestyles and so forth. Franklin County has been extremely successful with their program, and I see no reason why we can't do that as well. So we are looking, our commissioners right now are considering that as a budget proposal, and any support that we could get from the community would certainly be helpful. One other thing, and I talked to Clarence Horst about this morning, is that looking for a community partner or a group that would provide transitional housing for this group. Let's say we have individuals who have not been committed of a crime, but who really want to beat their addiction. If we had transitional housing where we were able to make sure that these individuals were drug-free for that 10 days, and then we're able to voluntarily get them on Vivitrol, just think of the difference that we could make in our community. We're paying for this socially too, because Meredith Medical Center is treating a lot of these folks. Social services is dealing with the family issues as a result of this. So, we as taxpayers are paying for these issues. So my suggestion would be, let's all get on board, do a collaborative effort, and start working rather than incarceration. Let's trying to treat these folks. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Holtzman.
Sheriff took it easy on me. Put those jokes away for the next time we talk. What the sheriff didn't tell you was the young lady that they found after working all night long out in the cold was led by him. And he really does get all the credit for that and that team of effort. He brought that real concept, brought it to my attention, talked to me a couple of times, said we really need to put this team together for searching for missing persons. And it wasn't too many months later that he spent the entire night out all night long looking for that poor child and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and not taking no for an answer. So good credit to you and your team for doing that. Traffic safety, the sheriff touched on that. In the last year, we've had a few fatalities on the dual highway. What's being done there? This is one of those collaborative efforts. We work with state highway, the state police, the sheriff's department. Engineering, I think, is going to be the big answer here. We have an area out there where there are very few lights, very few crosswalks. That's going to play into the solution. What's being done right now is there's a study underway. It started in November, and it finishes in this summer. That's done by a consultant through the state. In order to get something done on a state highway, there is a process through the state. So that process is in play. Our engineers from the city are involved, the county, and the state, and along with law enforcement. So we're hoping to get more of a permanent solution out on the dual highway in these areas where we're having the problems. So that's traffic safety. It's something we overlook these core functions sometimes when we want to talk about the hot issues, gangs or drugs and things like that, but it really is, it's missing persons. It's traffic safety. All these things are really core functions for us, and it's something that obviously we can't leave behind and forget. The sheriff talked about the heroin, and sort of like a doom and gloom kind of speech here, and I hate to do that to you in the mornings, but yes, we do have a heroin problem. I'd like to say that for every problem we have a plan that we're working on. We're working through some best practices. The sheriff talked about the Vivitrol program, which I love mentioning that. That is a wonder drug, and I think the more we can make use of that here, and as people cycle through the detention center, treat that addiction and get out, you're going to hear that from us. Education, treatment. We don't want to lock them up any more than he wants to house them at the sheriff's department. So let's get these people some help. Heroin is such a big problem in our community. Many of us in this room have somebody that we know that's either addicted or been affected by one of these fatalities. In the last 2 years, we've lost about 30 people each year to overdose. In 2013, a smaller number of those losses were due to heroin. But in last year, almost all of them were attributed to heroin overdose. So if you look within the numbers, even though they seem flat, what are people dying from? Prescription drugs sort of changed at the end of 2012, I think at the beginning of 2013. And the manufacturers, maybe you've heard this before, made some changes to their chemical structure. It's harder to abuse the drug. You can't crush it up and shoot the Oxycontins in your arm like they do the heroin. So you switch over to heroin. You run out of pills, you self-medicate with heroin. Heroin and prescription drugs does the same thing to your brain. They're all called opiates. So the sheriff talked about the plan with treatment, with Vivitrol as part of the solution. And I believe that is our best effort. Our narcotics task force, we have a joint narcotics task force together, and we partner with the Drug Enforcement Administration here in Washington County. And they've taken down some really nice cases. In just the last year, they had more than 1 kilo of heroin in just one particular case. What we've seen there is years past, people would drive back and forth to Baltimore. The market to pick up their heroin, bring it back, and they would distribute it among their group. That's changed. The dealers are now here. So that's a little, don't take it like there's no hope here. We're working on this problem. But the market is such that crack cocaine has taken a backseat for once, and in the last year, heroin has taken over. Almost all the efforts of the Narcotics Task Force have switched to that drug. That drug, we all know, of course, is very dangerous. When they cut it with cutting agents like fentanyl, it almost always results in an overdose, many times death. In the last year, even though the fatalities have held around 30, the number of non-fatalities have almost doubled. So we're up close to 100 this past year from just over 50 the year before. And if you look within those numbers, almost all of their increases are due to heroin overdose. So people are overdosing, they're getting to the hospital, or they're using the naloxone, and they're bringing them back, they're saving them. But the problem is still growing, really. So you can't just look at the fatalities, you have to look at the non-fatalities. And the emergency room will tell you they're overloaded every day with this. So what's the plan there? I think the plan is treatment. Day Reporting Center is going to be one of the answers to that. The members in this community are going to be a part of that. We're working with the health department as well. Captain Piper sits on their fatality review committee, so they're looking at each case as they're coming through. What happened here? Where did we miss? Where can we fill that gap with programs? So you really do have to get down to the individual cases and say what exactly is happening and what can we do to try to prevent the next one. So there's that work being done with the health department. They're taking a lead on that. I want to touch on my last block of instruction is crisis intervention, and I'm going to try to tie this back to perception of crime. Where we've seen an increase in heroin in the community and we have a plan to fix that, we're working on it. Another one that's quietly moving in the background is mental health. There are lots and lots of organizations in this community that work on mental health. And in one way or another, again, this affects a lot of families. To give you an idea, in just the past year, we handled over 660 emergency evaluations from the police department in 1 year's time. That's up from 500 the year before. So, huge number increases. When I first came on the job, we did an emergency evaluation. This is somebody that falls into a mental health crisis and they want to harm themselves or others. So we have a legal duty to take them into custody and take them to the hospital. We would do that about once a week. It was kind of rare. Now we do that every shift. Every shift. And it knows no boundaries. It's from kids in school to adults. It's oftentimes co-occurring, as I'm learning these terms, with drug addiction. It's amazing. So these mental health issues and drug issues are again, one of the things that they can address at the Day Reporting Center. But there are a lot of community members in here that are turning to that model. Let's address the mental health issue and the drug issue. If you peel back the drug issue one layer, you peel back crime, you find drugs, and oftentimes you peel back the drugs. In some of those cases, you'll see a mental health issue that they're trying to self-medicate. They're trying to self-medicate. So crisis intervention is the new term for us, and it's something that we're partnered again with the Sheriff's Department and Rick Rock at the Mental Health Authority. Turning Point's helping with on this. What is crisis intervention? Crisis intervention is the international model on how to deal with these cases. So what's our goals? Our goal is to reduce the number of repeat incidents with the same person. We've had individuals in the last year that we've dealt with over 10 times on the same thing. Imagine going to somebody's house or apartment because they're in crisis mode, they're going to hurt themselves. 10 times. Send a couple of police officers, you send a supervisor, you try to talk them down off harming themselves, get them into the police car, they go to the hospital, they're treated in various places, and then you're back there again, sometimes the next day, sometimes the same day, sometimes a week later, but we're going back and going back and going back. So we're trying to go after those repeat individuals first to make sure that they're connected well within the community. Frederick and Montgomery County have a model called mobile crisis, and that's what Rick Rock is trying to bring here. Mobile crisis is a healthcare professional that goes with the police officers to the scene and makes that connection right there. And then does the aftercare the next 2 or 3 days to make sure if they do get released from the hospital, that they're connected well with the community. Turning Point has a group called the ACT Team. It's a assertive care treatment, I believe, and they go in the community and also sort of preemptively reach out to these people and make sure they're taking their medication. The problem is, when we all feel good, we stop taking our medicine. That's what the doctor tells us to do. But when you have a mental health issue, when you feel good, you keep taking your medicine. And when they don't, that's typically when the police get called. So it causes a lot of stress on the agency and the emergency room when we're taking this many out there. But over 600 of these in a year, that's physically taking them out there. Sometimes we're talking in the ambulance and they go on their own. You could pretty much double that number. And the emergency room will probably tell you the walk-ins are much, much higher. So that's just what the police are seeing. So these are very dangerous situations for our police officers to put them in. Go in that room over there and talk him away from a knife. Go in that room over there and bring this person back out of their crisis mode that they're in, and then transport them to the hospital. That's a tough job sometimes. The training for this, Montgomery County's helping us with, is called Crisis Intervention Training. It's a 40-hour course. Imagine taking one of your employees and sending them away for a week's training. Imagine sending all of your employees away for a week's training. It's expensive, sometimes impractical. What we've done at our department, the sheriff's doing it as well, we're taking some select members off each of our shifts that have the inclination, we'll say, to want to do this. You really want to be a volunteer in this. You got to have heart for it. So they go through a 40-hour course, which includes work with a lot of healthcare professionals, learning a lot of new terms. They even go to a mental health facility and spend a day with what's now called consumers. That's the proper name to use when you're dealing with anybody with a mental health issue. I'm told it's consumers. So when we're dealing with consumers, they'll spend a day with them. They'll learn the difference between somebody with PTSD and somebody with bipolar disorder, and what works here and what doesn't work with that one. So for us, you're throwing those young officers into a room, find out what their problem is, and so you have to quickly diagnose it and then come up with your response. And you don't want to use the wrong response. So we're hoping to send those crisis intervention trained officers to each one of these calls to help quickly, more effectively diagnose it and see what are we dealing with, what's the best way to bring this thing to a close safely for everybody and get them off to the hospital and then do a good handoff. So we're already in the throes of doing the crisis intervention training with our officers. Hopefully coming soon, Rick Rock is looking to do a coordinator position out at the Mental Health Authority to help coordinate the aftercare, and then mobile crisis following that, which are actually field workers coming out. That takes some funding support for that. But you may hear about mobile crisis in the future, and if you haven't heard it yet, you heard it here first. So I'm just going to wrap up. Those are some of the major building blocks we're working on within the community. I don't want to leave you with no hope. I hope that what you heard was there's an issue, we're aware of it, we have a plan to address it, we need your help. So let's focus on that perception. How can we bring that down? It's not all lost. Okay? It's not all lost. There is a plan in place. Just like you have your businesses, we're focused on that perception of our community. It is a good place to live. The crime, we didn't throw any stats up on the board. I'm just going to take my word on it. Crime has been trending down for more than a decade. And though year to year you may have your ups and downs and they can make the news, when you're dealing in the crime business, you look at that long haul. You look at, just like your businesses, you look at where you want to be 5 years from now, where things are going, those kinds of trends. And then we just have to get out there, I think, as a community and just say, you know what, this is a good place to live. We have our issues. We're aware of them now. And some of you are already partnering with us in fixing those things. Others are maybe hopefully thinking about ways that you can jump on board and help with that. But I think everybody in here can do a takeaway of just helping to be ambassadors for the community. That, all hope is not lost. We have a plan in place, and, give this community a second shot. I believe that as we do our job better, it will improve the quality of life in this community. If we can reduce the perception of crime and deal with realities more, we can bring down the perception. We drive up your business. We drive up the value of your homes because your neighborhoods are better places to live. Let's not constantly drive down the neighborhood, talk bad about it. You wouldn't talk bad about another person's business, maybe unless they're a competitor. Okay, so don't compete against ourselves here in this respect is what I'm getting. And I think you're all smart enough to pick up on that. So we have our issues, we have a plan in place, and I think that I'll let Sheriff come back up here. If you have a question.
This is where we start the game called Stump the Cop. Go ahead.
Mark, downtown, I personally feel perfectly comfortable walking downtown. But a couple of weeks ago, I had a conversation with another community leader, and they said, I do not go downtown at all. What are you doing to address the perception of a high crime rate downtown? And what are new ideas that you have coming in that regard?
I'm glad you said the perception of a high crime rate downtown. That man paid attention. Well, I would say Charlie's been invested in downtown since 1988, and that's just one of those cornerstone businesses. He's here, and he's seen the changes throughout that block. I think you have to talk to the people that are currently invested in there. Our department's heavily invested in it. We have 8 police officers that are assigned downtown permanently. They work down there, and our goal is to protect that. Our goal is to help foster the city's growth of student housing downtown. There is a school downtown. There is a school downtown. Go downtown and watch 100+ kids walk through the square 2 or 3 times a day. It is refreshing to see. We have a college downtown. We have some student housing that's moving in. We have a beautiful new library. So we're invested with that group. And I think if you haven't been down there in a while, come down and see really what's going on. Talk to the people like Charlie that have stuck it out, that have businesses and are investing down there. The pop-up shops the city is doing is a fantastic way to reintroduce people to the downtown. We hear things like, boy, I didn't know, and I didn't know this was going on. So come down and see what's going on. Talk to one of our police officers. Walk up to them and ask them, what's really going on. So, yeah, education, crimereports.com is one of the websites we point people to a lot. Tells them what's really going on, what's reportable crime. But that's just reportable crime. We're focused on the perception. So for us, it's just going to be a lot of public safety visibility. We use our auxiliary police downtown. We use our regular police downtown. We have extra patrols downtown. We have a lot of good news going on there in the way of public safety presence. So it's going to take time, and I think it's going to take the business community to say, give us a second chance. Our business is down here. Come down.
What was that website you just mentioned?
crimereports.com.
And that just shows the Hagerstown?
No, you put in an address or a zip code, and it will give you information about crimes that are occurring. And it's for the county as well as for the city. Yes, Frank?
Is there a cause and effect issue here in the sense of what you're having to deal with? Do we know what the basis for creating drug issues in terms of social, economic, education, family, or anything like that?
Actually, prescription drugs was a big, huge part of that. But it transcends all socioeconomic groups, honestly, and even age groups. About 3 weeks ago, we had a gentleman who was 61 years old who was found dead from an overdose. All of the crime is being committed, I'll say at least 99% of it is being committed by people who have addictions, because it is that strong a hold on them that they need to support that addiction, and they can't do it. Now, we do have some functional people who can work. You might be surprised that some of your employees might actually have an addiction and you're not aware of it. I often say if you just have an interest in looking at the broad spectrum of people who have addiction issues, go out and sit across from the methadone clinic one morning from about 5:30 to 7:30 and see who's going in. Mothers carrying their kids on their hand, people who are driving work trucks who are getting their fix of methadone before they go to work. That is huge.
Yes.
Thank you both to your service to our county and the city. And I have a question because I work in retirement living, so we have a lot of obviously prescription drugs and controlled substances. And I heard you say in 2012 that that's reduced, the use of prescription drugs. how would I identify as an employer, though? I have no exposure to heroin at all. So I've been able to identify over the years if someone is abusing prescription drugs, some signs, but for heroin usage, are they can they be functioning, working employees for us? I mean, I'm not exposed to that. So.
Yes, they can be. Particularly if, what happens with methadone is, they start out at a certain dosage, and the key to that is they're reducing their tolerance level down. And so they may be at a point where they're functional. There are a lot of people who work and who have an addiction. The other thing that happened in 2012 that kind of helped drive the issue down of abuse of illegal drugs is the state started the prescription drug monitoring program. What happened prior to that is people who had an addiction would doctor shop. So they would go to one doctor and say, oh, I have a back problem, and they would get Oxycontin or Oxycodone. They'd go to the next doctor, do the same thing. Well, one doctor didn't know that the patient was visiting other physicians. Well, when the state started the prescription drug monitoring program, now as a physician, I can go online because every pharmacy has to electronically notify the state when somebody gets a prescription for any narcotic. And so if I'm Dr. A, I can check and see whether my patient has been getting prescriptions from someone else. And if they have, then I recognize, hey, we got an addiction issue here, and that we need to address that as an addiction as opposed to a pain management issue. There are training opportunities out there for folks. Our narcotics task force would be more than happy to come out and speak to your retirement community on that issue. We also have community police officers, crime prevention specialists who would glad to do that. And if you want to give us a call, I can actually give you Sergeant Holtzinger's number. It's 240-313-2194 if you want to contact him for any kind of presentation on those issues as well.
I appreciate how you're treating the addicts and trying to help them. What's being done to nip it in the bud with the dealers?
With dealers?
Yes.
One of the things that we do is every time, and it's not just us, all law enforcement in the community, is every time we get a call for an overdose, we will work that backwards to try to identify that dealer. Unfortunately, in the state of Maryland, we do not have a law yet that if I'm a dealer and I sold you heroin, you overdose and die, I can't charge you that way. But I can federally. I can charge you federally. So we're looking at doing those issues, and we've been very successful in doing them. Our narcotics task force in developing informants and being able to work cases in that regard. The DEA has a huge diversion program going on where they're looking at individual physicians, pharmacies, and so forth to see if there are issues. We had one in Frederick a few years back. They were basically taking cash money. You'd walk in, basically he would just issue a prescription for Oxycontin. So it's out there, but we are working on those issues. Every time we put an additional tool in the tool belt, we do that.
So I deal with the youth in Franklin County. It's a big problem with high school students there. And we talk a lot about enforcement. Obviously, that's your focus. Are you aware of any success stories for prevention? And it seems like with the problem we have, prevention isn't working.
It isn't, unfortunately. And I mentioned a while ago, one of the things as a business community that you could do, we're talking about the Vivitrol. And in a number of cases, one of the things that really got me started on the day reporting center is I was out with our guys handling calls one night, and I ran across a young lady who was 23, very nice looking young lady, and unfortunately she had been addicted to heroin since she was 17. Her family dealt with this issue and it pretty much just disowned her because, when you have an addiction like that, one of the things you're going to do, you're going to start stealing from your parents, you're going to start stealing from any other relatives, grandparents, whatever. They, through tough love, try to deal with those issues, but it's very, very difficult. And so, I was talking about the Vivitrol program, and for those who really want to get off of their addiction. You know, if we can partner as a community to have a transitional housing where we can ensure that those individuals are drug-free for that 10-day period, if they voluntarily want to do it, then they can get on the withdrawal program. One of the problems we have is, you know, when somebody makes that decision that they want to get off of their addiction, they can't wait 2 hours, let alone 2 weeks to get into a facility or to get treatment. And that's one of our issues as a society is, you know, we have such a backlog that we just need to, you know, address those type of issues. And that's really why I'm advocating for the day reporting and also for community involvement, you know, with the withdrawal program. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Good.
Specifically noted to Chief Holtzman, would it be appropriate, because one of the things that drives business is money, and we hear that, I'm a firm believer, really the perception is we have a perception of what really is going on, but there is a real cost to what we're talking about here, and our frequent flyers in this situation are costing us taxpayers millions of dollars a year. And you guys have put together some pretty good programs to address that issue. Because you sit here as a business community and you're, well, we ought to do something with transitional housing, we ought to do that. Someone's saying, yeah, where should the money come from? But you have some pretty good stats if you think it would be appropriate to say how much some of these individuals are costing us as taxpayers every year because we're not doing something. Would that be appropriate?
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, Clarence and I had a conversation about a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, regarding one of our we'll just say it was an individual downtown, suffered from alcoholism. It was the main issue, and some mental health issues. That person was taking ambulance rides, and over the last at least 2 years, the ambulance service contacted our downtown officer, which is Mitch Philgis, gets the credit for this one, and said, look, we've tallied up over $1 million in services for this one individual, taking him to the hospital, bringing him back, taking him to the hospital, bringing him back 43 times in the last year. This one person, just in the last year. So Officer Phil what's the underlying issue here? It's alcoholism. So he worked with the state's attorney's office and the local district court. The person's now at the detention center. Unfortunately, this is where you treat them. The JSAP program at the detention center, I think, is where this one's being treated on, I believe it's 4 consecutive 30-day sentences. The maximum for the disorderly intoxication was 30 days. The judge said, we just can't keep bringing this one back dozens and dozens of times a year. Let's try to force the issue. So Sheriff talks about transitional housing. Those are for the volunteers. For the ones that don't volunteer, we'll help them out. So we'll take them through the court system, get them court ordered, but then you have to have a good, successful step-down program, which is what he's talking about with the day reporting center. So those are some of the hidden costs to our community. Where does the Community Rescue Service go for funding? It can only bill so much, and it doesn't even get to bill anywhere near half its rides in the ambulance. So it comes to the community. The city contributes to Community Rescue Service. I know I believe the county does as well. So we're all paying for this. We're all paying for this. We'll pay it on the back end or the front end. It's the kind of thing, where do we shift those dollars? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your expertise with us. Quality, public safety, quality businesses, it starts at the top. And I hope you've seen this morning two of our great leaders in public safety, Chief Holtzman and Sheriff Mullendore. We want to thank you for your efforts. I met both of them about 6 months ago. I'm new to the community, and what impressed me about them is their professionalism, their experience, their education. They're well-educated people, and they're continuing to work at being smart at what they do. So we appreciate your efforts on our behalf. I was also struck by the fact that they and the folks who work with them are both very accessible. If you pick up the phone and call them or email them, they'll get back to you in a relatively quick, short order. And so if you have questions, concerns, you want to get involved, I know they're very responsive. Please feel free to contact with them. They have officers and detectives working and they work in partnership with the community. And that's the other message is, as a business community, we can complain about the problem, or we can be part of the solution. And so we've heard this morning some opportunities to participate in that. And I also mentioned that I think both of the chief and the sheriff, do you offer ride-along programs for civilians? Do you have ride-along programs for civilians if they want to ride along? So ride-along Citizens Police Academy, so there's opportunities to get more engaged and more educated. So thank you again, gentlemen, for your work. I wanted to also acknowledge there's someone, or a couple of people here from Susquehanna Bank this morning. Good morning. I sat right at the table with you. I wanted to acknowledge that Susquehanna Bank was the At Your Service Award winner for this year's award, so congratulations. Let's give them a round of applause. I wanted to mention just a couple of other events. This is a great turnout. We have some other great events. Next, is it Tuesday or Wednesday for State of the City? Tuesday, the 10th. State of the City, right back here at Hager Hall. We have over 150 people signed up. If we have more room, please come out and hear the State of the City. On the 19th, Thursday, Business After Hours at the Children's Village of Washington County. We'll have a great opportunity for after hours. And all of you, if you're a chamber member, registered to win $6,500 is the raffle now. So $6,500, there's 6,500 good reasons to attend. And on Wednesday the 25th, morning mixture at the Washington County Museum of Fine Arts. Again, this was a secret to me. It's a great facility, museum. If you haven't been there, it's a great opportunity to see that. So you go to Hagerstown.org for more information. Lastly, we want to thank you for coming out. This morning in particular, drive extra safely. We have public safety officials park in the parking lot. And remember, hands-free cell phone use. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.